Welcome to the RD2BE podcast. Each week we sit down with a different registered dietitian nutritionist to showcase the diversity of opportunity in the dietetics profession. Our aim is to dismantle the notion that there is a traditional career path. I'm Carl Barnes, the registered dietitian behind the scenes of RD2BE.
And I am Jenna Warnock, the RD2BE host. Our RD guests share their stories, career paths, and advice to help students like us succeed in the profession. Welcome back to another week of the RD2BE podcast. I'm your host, Jenna, and this week we're super excited to feature a very well-accomplished dietitian in a leadership role that we definitely want to highlight the opportunity that aspiring RDs can have for pursuing these leadership roles within dietetics. And so we're super excited to sit down with Miss Stacey Krawczyk. She's the Director of Nutrition and Wellness at the American Diabetes Association. And thank you so much, Stacey, for taking the time to talk about your role, what you do, and all those wonderful things like that as a dietitian.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, and so we always like to just start from the beginning of what sparked your interest in pursuing nutrition and dietetics in the first place.
I think that's a great question. I learned about the nourishment of others in my grandmother's kitchen growing up, really. When she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in the 1970s, I was intrigued by how she was told to eat and to feel better, and what she actually did to merge the two, both food enjoyment and food for health. I didn't know it at the time, but that really laid the groundwork for when I attended university to originally select a major in dietetics. She lived to be 100 years old, by the way.
Awesome. Yeah. And I mean, given that she lived to be a centurion, that's regardless of if you have any chronic conditions, that's a feat in of itself. And so that's amazing to hear. And while you were studying dietetics, did you have any specific, given that you kind of came in with experiencing managing diabetes with your grandmother, but did you have any specific interests or ideas of what you wanted to specifically pursue in dietetics while you were studying nutrition?
I think I knew what I wanted to not do more than what I wanted to do. I was not really interested in working in a hospital or a clinic, and really kind of preferred more population health, community health-based programming, especially since I'm a fifth generation farmer. I have a really keen interest in food systems. I lean heavily to education and application for prevention-based programs that drive impact. So I think that's how I eventually forged the path through to public health nutrition.
And whenever I was looking at just kind of your history of other positions that led you to the American Diabetes Association, you definitely had a unique background, and your positions really did reflect your emphasis on that community, on that research population based with the National Soybean Research Center, Kellogg's, Preventia, and then you were also self-employed as a nutrition consultant. And a lot of these kind of already lay the groundwork of that leadership, of that taking initiative, of needing to be independent, self-motivated, all things like that. And can you describe how you kind of got to these opportunities and these roles? Because we hear with a lot of, there's this notion whenever you're going through dietetics where it's like you just have to do clinical, that's what we all do, that's what you have to do, and it's just the way of life, and then you get to do the specific thing that you want to do after that. But how did you lay the groundwork? Because you mentioned you knew for sure that you didn't really want to do that hospital-based dietetics. How did you lay the groundwork so that you were able to go to these unique positions right off the bat?
Well, I think most of all my employment and consulting opportunities have been as a result of being a known entity. I'm a real strong believer of building bridges and networking, and I started to see that pattern emerge early in my career. Leveraging your network often helps you kind of get at the table for the interview. You still got to deliver and show your value, right? But as I moved from early career in public health to better understand my own strengths in identifying innovative ways, whether it's connecting messaging with consumer insights or just really understanding what the felt need is of people who are seeking food and nutrition guidance, it naturally led me to roles that needed those skills to be successful. So being able to translate and communicate science and evidence in ways that connect with consumers is an important and valuable skill for all RDs, regardless of where you practice. But I guess as for how these roles developed, I'd say that it started out because I started to better understand my strengths and opportunities. I pursued roles that would leverage those strengths and offer skill building to help my opportunities, also known as weaknesses. Um, like, for example, the National Soybean Research Lab came about because I was active in the local dietetics community. I was a farm girl, and I've been doing a lot of local community-based programming at the time. Kellogg's, that was a little bit of an anomaly because I didn't really know anyone there, but I was able to articulate what nutrition marketing and communication was through the examples of what I had done at the Soybean Research Lab. Now, Preventia was a response to consulting drying up during the pandemic, and the founder was a colleague and needed someone to support in their particular leg of the company's journey. But regardless of the outcome, I always try to identify the professional growth I make at each employment opportunity. Some work cultures are better than others, some roles are better than others, but I'm still me. So how do I take what I learned at this job and build on it for the next one or inform the kind of roles that I want to pursue?
Yeah, and I like how you have the emphasis on not losing yourself in the process because and the emphasis on reflecting, and it definitely sounded like each position built off of the next. And that's really how you grow and how you progress in any career. It's you need to take a moment in any position that you're at of what am I doing right now? How does it align with my goals? How can I improve myself? And then that honestly naturally opens up the doors for those better opportunities. And then I am glad we've heard this time and time again from successful dietitians in these leadership positions that networking, it makes the world go round. It definitely helps significantly with progressing and getting to those positions that you would have never known otherwise. And I'm glad that you mentioned the fact that you were involved in your local student dietetic association. We're finding more part in specifically whenever it comes to just professional organization involvement in general nowadays, it's declining a lot and there's just not that much engagement as there was before. But I just like to anytime that someone mentions networking or student dietetic associations or any dietetic association is now more than ever is like the best time to get involved because now it's like you're in a big fish in a small pond and where it's like I can almost guarantee like a dietetic association needs someone to help with social media or like they need help with someone or something in that local area doing a fundraiser or even like because of the pandemic there's a lot more remote volunteer opportunities to get involved with these dietetic associations. And so I'm very, very glad that you mentioned that because I take every opportunity that I can to just uplift and mention how important volunteering for those types of organizations are and having guests like you on to show the fruit of that labor and how starting early, getting involved early really helps compound over time because the sooner you start, really the better because then that gives you more time to meet more people, to build your network, to like reach more people and expand it so that whenever you do get to the point of being a practicing RD, you already kind of have those opportunities or at least some opportunities waiting for you. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that. And so kind of like laying the groundwork of what got you to your current role of director of nutrition and wellness with the American Diabetes Association. You described how you got your positions with the Soybean Research Center, Kellogg's, Preventia, how the certain either environment, circumstance, or your experiences led you to those roles. But specifically, especially for a well-known organization like the ADA, how did that opportunity arise for you?
Yeah, again, it's all about timing too. As I looked for my next role after Preventia, I really wanted to get back to my nutrition roots and focus on food nutrition systems, population health, nutrition communications. And so I widened my search to really kind of target, organizations that had roles that were in that realm. And so when the role became available at ADA, I applied as it pretty much checked all the boxes I was looking for. And what I didn't mention previously, I'd spent about 9 years doing consulting with a blood glucose monitoring company. So I'd always had an interest and a heart for supporting people with diabetes, as well as, like I mentioned before, type 2 does run in my family. So it was really something that felt like, oh, this is really interesting, intriguing. I want to pursue, finding out more. And so as a result, it just kind of worked out. And, this amazing organization, as well as the amazing people that just have such a heart for advocating for people with diabetes, as well as doing as much as we possibly can to, develop, programs and policies and support for people with diabetes, their caregivers, and stakeholders.
Yeah, no, definitely. And kind of going more into whenever the job opened up for you and you saw that checked all of your boxes, what specific, can you kind of go a little bit more into what boxes the ADA checked for you? Because I do think whenever it comes to selecting jobs, yes, there is that balance of you do want to get a job, but you also want to get a job that's right for you, just as, like it's definitely a two-way street in selecting those certain positions that you want to apply for. And so whenever you saw the ADA job opening, what made it specifically feel right for you to apply?
Well, I'm at a point in my career that, I understand a strength of mine is, developing systems and strategies that really lean into efficiencies and effectiveness, whether that is partnership development, finding win-win solutions for internal or external partners, being able to craft messaging strategy that is grounded in insights and really helps to deliver upon what we could and should be saying in a persistent and consistent message. And so, that's a lot of what I do in this role as, when I'm focused on developing messaging and content from a strategy position, or if it's developing professional education or guidelines or qualifications for ADA programs, or really disseminating the nutrition standards highlighted either in the nutrition consensus report and the standards of care. I think because it is at a level of what I'm not only interested in, but also what I'm pretty good at, it just made sense that this type of role was, kind of the next piece in my career journey.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad that you also focused on you knew your strengths and you recognized like what you were good at and how it would apply to this job, because I feel like with a lot of aspiring dietitians, there's a whole bunch of imposter syndrome circulating where they just don't feel like we're, even though we've been in school for now it'll be 6 years at this point once we get the RD credential, where it's like we still don't feel competent enough to fulfill these roles and fulfill these positions. And so whenever I know whenever you talked about kind of your process for finding those positions prior to this role, where it was identifying your strengths, identifying your weaknesses, you kind of already had this reflective mindset that helped you progress towards each role. But was there anything else that kind of helped you instill that confidence in yourself and knowing yourself, or was it mainly the reflections that you did along the way?
Well, I think it really is that reflection because it all was not rosy. There were lots of opportunities that didn't work out. Being a consultant is hard because you win some, you lose some, and in terms of contracts, and it may not be anything to do with the work. It's about personalities or so I think it is trying to keep perspective. And so a known self is really important. So understanding your personality type, how best you work, who are your best partners, and then, kind of crafting experiences that help you test that out. Okay, I think I'm pretty good at strategy. Let's develop a strategy here. And then, you get positive feedback. Yeah, this was really good. You have a way of putting things to paper that I haven't seen before. Okay, so then I know I spin that in a way that helps, inform the next job opportunity. And it's being purposeful, I guess, of understanding who you are and how you work and you're the best environment for you because, there were a lot of opportunities that I pursued that I ultimately turned down because either it was not the right work culture, notably because I had been in work cultures that I didn't want to belong to anymore. Or it was the kind of job that wasn't going to provide me enough of a challenge as well as positive feedback. So again, it's that being known by others, knowing yourself and how you best work, and then also knowing when you need to move on if something's not working. And it's not a reflection upon you as a professional, it's a reflection upon that particular experience. So you glean from it what, were the positive things that you learned about yourself, about the role, about what you like to do and what you don't like to do, and then use that to inform the next phase or the next job opportunity. So I guess that it's being purposeful in, like you said, that self-reflection and understanding, because you can't be passive if you want to have a long and sustainable career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I like how you emphasize like being intentional, purposeful, reflective, and not being passive, because I do feel like a lot of aspiring RDs, they are those go-getters. We are super ambitious. We are wanting to like put all these things on our plate, but sometimes we don't take a second to be like, okay, what is coming onto my plate? What is the purpose of the thing that I'm just about to take on? Because it, like we're just in this super hardworking, ambitious culture, a lot of type A personalities where we all
Mhm.
just want to be at the top of the class, even though everyone has, like it's definitely dietetics is a very unique educational experience with the peers that you're surrounded by, because we're all super ambitious, we're all big go-getters, but sometimes we just get lost in the sauce and we forget exactly like kind of the goals that we're reaching for, what we're specifically trying to progress to that next step. And so I'm glad that you kind of set that reminder of it's, don't be, it's a balance of not being passive. Like, yes, reach out for opportunities, get experience. Yes, do that, but also know your why behind it, know what you're going to get from it. And if it is an experience that isn't good on paper, what are you going to learn from it? Make it purposeful, make it intentional so that whenever you progress to the next thing, you learn from your mistakes. And I can definitely attest that even in my own path and experience that has definitely been helpful for me, because I worked in food service for 3 years and I was like, I don't want to be a food service dietitian, but I can say that I have literally flushed everything out in food service and I feel confident moving on, knowing that, okay, I tried it. I feel good in my decision. Now I can move on, because it also helps you with making those decisions and knowing what opportunities to turn down, which opportunities to pick up. So it is a lot of good experience, no matter what experience you get, just as long as you do get some experience. So yeah, a bunch of good stuff. And now kind of getting, oh, were you going to say something else? I didn't want
No, I was just going to affirm that, and the fact that you're the only you. And yes,
to.
we are ambitious, and we're type. A lot of us are type A's, and we all want to be successful. But you're the only you, and so you have special gifts and talents that you can only contribute. And so you just need to find what those are and figure out that path. And it's funny, there's a lot of things that we do that we don't necessarily like or appreciate, or I can step back and take a look now. My first week in my internship of my food service rotation, I had to do 66 dozen corn muffins. That was so I made it a time and motion study. And I still look back to this day, I will not make a corn muffin. If my husband wants it, I'll make cornbread, but I'm not going to make corn muffins. But I think it's one of those things that, okay, this really sucks. How do I make it something that is useful for me to understand moving forward?
Yeah, no, and I definitely, because I worked for a catering company for 2 years and I very much understand doing that many, again, having those experiences where you're like, I'm glad I did it, but I'm not doing it again. And
Right.
just kind of moving on after that. But yeah, I am glad that like you've shared your experiences and saying that not all of it's pretty, but all of it can be purposeful. And definitely emphasizing on no one's you, and that really that yeah, like even if you're not the top of your class, you're still you. And even if you are at the top of your class, you're still you and you're more than whatever position or GPA or experiences that you do. So very, very good reminders for because yeah, we are reaching a point in dietetics where, like, with a master's degree requirement, they're changing the dietetics application process, they're changing a lot of things, and so
Yeah.
it can definitely get muddled and get confusing. But having these types of reminders, I'm sure, is very helpful for people aspiring to become dietitians. And so you have talked a great, a really, really great deal about like how your past experiences have helped progress you to the roles that you're at now, and a little bit of what you do in your current position, like with strategy and with disseminating nutrition information, kind of working on policies. But can you kind of go a little bit more in depth as to what you do in your role within the ADA, some like common things that you do each day or each week, who you talk to, things like that?
Sure. So like a typical day kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, all of the staff at ADA are remote, which is a phenomenal opportunity, especially that allows us to be across 6 different time zones and in the organization. And while the organization is large, it's still relatively small. We work very closely with all different functions across the organization. And, I may be having a call with the chief medical and science officer and, having an opportunity to discuss a certain policy or what have you. And then other days I'm editing content that is going to go out on our website. So I think from the perspective of, as a remote worker, there's always, opportunities to make sure that we are leaning into engagement. I do have one direct report, and so I work really hard to make sure that she feels, confident and, appreciated and, is given clear direction on her work product. But, from a perspective, I spend a lot of my day on video calls like Zoom, or in Teams chats, or, I do block time to be able to work on focused work when I need to, because I find that if you don't, your schedule will get filled with lots of different meetings. And so, making sure that the work gets done, because I'm all about work-life balance, because I've been in roles that were not. And so I'm at a point in my career that I want to make sure that, the people that I work with also feel that way as well. They're valued and can contribute to what we're doing. But, I don't anticipate them working on the weekends or the evenings or et cetera. So we work hard during the day to, like I said, from my role as a director, I'm looking at the bigger picture. So the strategies, the policies, the standards, that we would be elevating. And we work with volunteers very closely. The organization has an amazing, unbelievably army of volunteers, healthcare professionals that contribute their time and expertise to the organization. And so being able to harness that and leverage their amazing expertise to really inform what we do. We started a nutrition and wellness advisory group. We just met last week with them, and they help us. They're sort of like our backstop. So as we put forward some of our programs and ideas and thoughts and strategies, we take it past them. Like, hey, what do you think of this? Are we on the right direction? Is there something we're missing? So I think that helps us, stay grounded, and we're not just out here on our own in a remote environment, but that we're really trying to make sure what we do is going to deliver the impact for people with diabetes, their caretakers, their stakeholders, any of those that are involved in adjacencies, whether it be in policy, advocacy, programming, et cetera.
Yeah, and it's very interesting and good that you kind of focus on the how it's good to have like the remote aspect where you're able to connect with a lot of people across the country, but also emphasizing that work-life balance where like especially post pandemic world where there's a lot more remote work out there, it definitely, and part of it is positive in the sense of you have more opportunities to make your not make your own schedule, but with having remote work you have a new way of incorporating work life balance. But I'm glad that you mentioned too that just like with a normal 9 to 5 in-person job, you can get swamped and get kind of bombarded with meetings or with a lot of things on your plate if you don't plan your time wisely. And so I think that is a really good insight just for whether it's a remote job within the ADA or any other organization, just keeping in mind that burnout and work-life balance can get a little, iffy in a remote setting. And it's just a different type of tool or ways to work with it compared to like an in-person job. So I am glad that you focused or emphasize that as well. And also just the amount of people that you're talking to and like collaborating with and getting ideas from, because it definitely sounds like you're not alone, just like
Yeah.
stuck on your computer or anything, just doing work, typing away for 8 hours a day. It's definitely a collaborative process where you're learning from people, getting insight in order to do the job that you do, which is super important and really great. And as far as with your role or with your experiences, what you've done that led you up to this position, you have been able to build yourself up to quite a unique role within the American Diabetes Association with being the director of nutrition and wellness, as well as your other past positions have been equally unique. But what would you say is your favorite thing about specifically uniquely being a dietitian?
Well, I think we touched on it a little bit earlier in the fact that, knowing I'm a part of this distinguished profession that uses our subject matter expertise to help people. I mean, we help people feel better, nourish their families. We help translate evidence to impact personalized health goals. I think, being able to be that, helper when it comes to food, because everybody eats, right? And so having an understanding of how we can eat that nourishes not only our body, but our soul and our community and our culture, all of that. That's what I love about being in the field of dietetics.
Yeah, and we are really in the best time for uplifting our voice. And I mean, yes, there's the annoyances of people on social media that aren't dietitians or aren't accredited and are saying wacky stuff that we have to clean up or just try and emphasize is not the case or things like that. But it's also with, the education requirements changing and with the whole structure of dietetics kind of moving into a different direction, there is more opportunities for different ways that dietitians can have roles in the public. And I feel like dietitians are being seen more just with like how the ADA works with policy and advocacy, how there's like the M&T Act going around, and then there's a lot of um, nutrition policy circulating where dietitians are finally kind of getting recognized and uplifted, because like with the MNT Act, you have people that are like, okay, well, what's so special about medical nutrition therapy? Dietitians are the only one, dietitians are the only ones that can do MNT. And then they're like, oh, what's a dietitian? And then it like kind of opens that up. And so we are in a transformative phase where the role of dietitians can hopefully, expand, and post pandemic, remote work, hybrid work, in person work. There's just a lot of different modalities and ways that dietitians can be impactful and effective to everyone, because with what you said, everybody does eat. And so just like how everyone's unique and every aspiring RD has a place in being a dietitian, there's so many different things that you can do as a dietitian that like you can that is honestly one of the things that I'm excited about becoming a dietitian, is that like it's this special profession where you don't like, if you want to start out in clinical, that's great. But then if you don't want to do clinical anymore, you can start your own private practice. You could go back to school and get a PhD. You could do research. You could find a remote position, or you could like run a food service thing or a consulting business. You can do so many things, and you're not really confined to just one career, like one specific field or niche in dietetics. You can really do whatever you want. And yeah, I think
And really,
mhm,
each role within dietetics is not better than the other.
mhm,
It's all about how you're wired. I mean, I know some amazing clinical dietitians that I don't know how they, do what they do on a daily basis. And I'm just in awe of the amazing way that they're able to come alongside, whether it be patients or patients or whatever, and really make a difference in
mhm,
ignite that behavior change. And, then our food service, like you mentioned, we have to be able to deliver, food in a quantity foods way, in a healthful way, in a safe way. And, it's all about what you're interested in and how you're wired. And, that's why the field is so amazing, because it is this, broad, we all have these foundational truths that we know, but yet we can then lean into how we're wired and how we want to communicate with our constituents, whether they're it's a direct patient, or it's someone eating in a university setting, or it's a person with diabetes, and the list goes on and on and on. And so that's what's great about the profession in general, is like there is so many opportunities that we can personally and professionally pursue.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned like not one position is greater or worse than the other, because every dietitian has a place and every aspiring
Yes,
dietitian will have a place in dietetics, because there's so many opportunities, and there will never there will always be a need for dietitians, just because there will always be a need for people to eat. And so you'll always need those professionals and people at the forefront of nutrition knowledge to be able to communicate to people either on that like individual one-on-one setting or population-based setting for the best like eating practices, and taking into account not just what is like scientifically molecularly correct, but like culturally food preferences,
absolutely.
allergies, all. And it's super complex, and that's why you need dietitians, and you need all of us in unique and versatile roles to be able to accommodate for all of those special preferences. So yeah, I'm really glad that you added that emphasis that every role that a dietitian does, or if they choose to pursue, is equally important, just because of the nature of food and the nature of how people eat. And so then the flip side of the coin of, because I mean there's so many great things to talk about dietetics, we could literally talk about it all day, but is there anything that, regarding your experience as a dietitian, it could just be a specific experience that you had in a past role, or just something that, I don't want to say least favorite thing, but I'd say challenges, or just things that you've experienced as a dietitian that, like, again, yes, we could talk about all those good things, but maybe just those things that we don't typically talk about with becoming a dietitian that could be seen as a struggle, a challenge, or a barrier that you might have experienced.
Well, you've already mentioned it. It really is for me, social media. It offers such a big platform that has ignited a negative landscape that often demonizes professionals, foods, experiences. It's a very reductionist view. So it's like, my way works for me, so you must do my way or you're wrong, or you're influenced by industry, or you're part of a conspiracy or whatever. And what is at the heart of all this negativity is either I want influence, I want power, or I want money because I'm the best. I know the secret they're not telling you, buy my book or plan or coaching sessions or supplements. It goes on and on and on because I'm right and those people are wrong, meaning, professionals who, work in this space. And quite frankly, for those, influencers, advocates, whatever, to label me as one of those people and disavow my professional impact of over a 30-year career focused on food and nutrition, on my graduate degree in practical applied research, my professional credential that I, worked to secure and maintain is ridiculous. And, I think obviously you can see the passion behind that. I walked away from some of the platforms because I was just really tired of the negativity. I don't need that kind of negativity in my life. And so I think as, dietitians enter the social media realm, helping them to understand that, they have if they're going to play in that field, they have to have a very watchful eye on how they're doing it. The what should always be solid with evidence, right? But it's the how that needs to really be a focus on, so that they are carrying the mantle for, the other dietitians out there.
Yeah, because there's definitely like almost every dietitian and nutrition student as well has the same sentiment towards social media and how much it's bringing not just our profession down, but just the whole outlook towards nutrition down and ways of eating, just because there's so much mixed information. And I very much agree where I don't think I'll ever be a social media dietitian, but the dietitians that are being on social media and are pushing that message forward in an effective and in a positive, good way, I'm gonna keep cheering them on from the sidelines because
Yes.
we definitely need that, because that's another thing too is and I've heard this from past guests where if you're a nutrition student or you're like a dietetic intern or you're not yet RD credentialed but you are planning on getting RD credentialed, you can still get on social media, promote proper nutrition and
Right.
accurate information, and you don't need a credential behind your name to do that. Just as I mean, as long as you aren't following in the footsteps of other influencers, in which, given that you're studying nutrition, you already are following different footsteps. You're following a more educated and informed footsteps. And so you already are in a better position to relay better, accurate, more positive nutrition information than the counterparts. And so I'm glad that you emphasized and are bringing to light, yeah, the negativities of social media, but also that, you're not saying social media needs to be completely like scrapped off, not on the table at all.
Oh,
Because
no.
yeah, no, yeah, definitely. And I wasn't getting that impression at all whatsoever. And because I'm glad that you mentioned, like, if you are a dietitian going into that space, things to be wary of, because yes, it's an annoying thing that we kind of have to deal with, but it's the way at which you deal with it that you'll get more positive and more effective impact from
Right.
it. Because the positive with social media is you can reach so many people. And then the negative
Right.
of social media is that you can reach so many people. And
Right.
so,
I would say
yeah.
examine your motives.
Hmm.
So how you disseminate the information, the what, keeping it in perspective, and that, it's all about, there's going to be some, good things and there's going to be some not so good things. And, so from my perspective, at this stage in my career, I've got enough to handle on. I'm gonna, defer to other people who are more adept at some of these different platforms than me, and just focus on what I do best.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's what everyone, yeah, that's just a motto that everyone, whether you're in the social media space as an aspiring RD or an RD or not, because if you're best at that social media space, great, keep it up. And exactly with like what we were saying before, there is a time and a place and a position for like every dietitian out there. And yeah, so just a lot of good stuff and great advice for those pursuing the RD credential. And so, kind of going to more just general advice, and what's been really helpful is that from the way that you've described your path, you are super reflective. You do like to kind of grow and move on from each position. And so, kind of looking back on your own educational experience pursuing the RD credential, is there anything you wish you heard or that you wish you knew before getting the credential that would have helped you out, or just things that would have been reassuring to you?
Well, I think I probably already said it from the perspective of, it doesn't necessarily apply to just solely dietetics. It's really any career or profession. You're going to have difficult jobs. Some things you're not going to like, and you may not even like who you're working for or with, but you need to find the balance. So find the positives, do the best that you can in the situation. But if you find that you are changing how you see yourself and you don't like it, it's time to move on. Use it as a lesson that shapes what you want to do next, and offer grace to that experience for what it was, because it gave you focus on who you are as a person and as a professional. And, again, it's important, just as important to know what you don't want to do as it is what you do want to do. Life here on earth is finite. Find your joy, support others on their journeys too.
Yeah, and I mean, there is absolutely no harm whatsoever into reinstating something that's super important, which is staying true to yourself, being honest with yourself as well, and knowing when to either step away or lean into a position based off of what you've learned about yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, and just being really in tune with who you are, what you want. And it's okay if you don't know what you want, because sometimes it takes having those not so fun experiences to find out what you want. Because I mean, I remember like at the very start of this recording, you were like, well, I knew for sure what I didn't want to do. And that helped you still shape your direction as to getting to where you are today. And so, regardless of if it's something that you do want to do, or know that you want to do, or know that you don't want to do, either way, that can help you shape what direction you go, whether or not you want to stay where you're at. And again, just really great advice. And then one final thing that I always like to ask guests is something that's kind of action based and kind of leaving the audience with either something to think about what they could do moving forward, different mindset, or just something that they can kind of take away and apply to them in the future. And so, do you believe there's anything an aspiring RD can work towards or focus on now that can set them up for success as a dietitian? And if it's reiterating something that we've already said before, that's totally fine. Or if it's something new, just anything that you think an aspiring RD could do moving forward.
I think, I'll just pick out the themes of the things that I talked about, and maybe dial up some others. So first of all, build your network. Being a known entity can open doors. So build that network. Be authentic. People trust when your character and your actions align. That helps a lot of situations. And it also helps you to stay true to yourself. Develop skills. And it takes time to develop those skills, experience, purposeful action. You can't fast track a sustainable success or jump ahead in the line. Sometimes paying your dues builds that muscle memory you need for longevity to weather the storms. And so, yes, did I love putting on a dinosaur suit and, doing nutrition education curriculum for preschoolers? Not particularly, but it also gave me, some of the humility that you need, especially as a type A personality. And then lastly is, is always a good one is be kind. You never know what somebody's dealing with.
Literally so many great pieces of advice to just wham bam at the very end. And at least and anyone listening can take at least one of those things away. So thank you so much, Stacey, for sharing not only just what you do within the ADA, but just general advice. I could definitely tell with each thing that we talked about, you have experience, you have lessons, you have things that are definitely worth sharing with those wanting to become a dietitian. And so again, thank you so much for sharing your story, your advice, and I know that everyone listening will learn at least one thing from this recording. So thank you so much again.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed our conversation.